And we are live. Hello and welcome. So, in today's show, another month's gone by. We're at the end of September now. Oh my goodness, time is just absolutely flying. But in today's show, we're going to have a look at the progress being made with the Decred redesign. We're going to kind of touch upon that and anything else any of you guys in the audience want to discuss. A bit of a free for all today. So it should be quite interesting. But before we get into all that, how's it going, fellas? How's it going, Exodus?
Great. Ready to talk about the redesign.
How's it going, Aaron?
Same, excited to dive in, and yeah, it's a beautiful Sunday out here on the West Coast, so we're loving life today.
Oh, fantastic. So, I mean, the first thing that I want to kind of touch on, so this redesign, we've kind of already been through this, but it'll be quite interesting to see where we're at right now. So, this is going to be the first time that AI has been used in such a way to help us kind of make all of the elements of Decred kind of come together, including copy, including design, including the flow, and just kind of get a professional feel um, using these new tools. So I'm curious to know, and I'm presuming this is probably one of the first time you've actually done this, Aaron. I'm curious to know how's it going, what are the stumbling blocks you've come across, and generally kind of how's it progressing?
Yeah, for sure. So far, we're making good progress. I felt like at the very beginning it took a few weeks to orient. That Decred has quite the surface area. There's a lot of features. There's a lot of It's a rather large ecosystem. I mean, it's been around nearly 10 years, right? So it took a hot minute to step back and kind of figure out, okay, here's how we want to build a more cohesive experience across this entire ecosystem. Currently, to date, by the nature of how things have gotten built, it's felt a little bolted on as new things have been added. And so, to really get the opportunity to take a step back and clean the slate and say, all right, here's how we'd proceed forward. It took a minute, but I think once we landed on the information architecture that we presented this week, and then landed on kind of leaning into the idea of sovereignty, the idea of the self-sovereign individual in particular from a copy perspective. It felt like we were starting to to finally cook with gas. And then Bo's always been amazing, so he was kind of cooking as I worked on the information architecture and the copy, and he has put forward three landing page concepts as of this week for um, yeah, for decred.org, which of course is our hub and the primary kind of, focal point of the entire ecosystem. So, Bo's attempt was to kind of underneath the umbrella of cypherpunk meets solarpunk, effectively take existing brand colors. We actually have quite a few, and so he went kind of deep in the archives, if you will, and put forward these three styles, right? A being what he called kind of more cinematic, but he leans into kind of the darker green and kind of a yellowish gold color. A more neutral palette was kind of the second one that's more gray, a little bit of blue, and then C was much more kind of foundational to the brand that we're familiar with in Decred, which is like that dark navy blue. And so I was happy with all three, happy to put them in front of the community. It seems like most people are kind of leaning towards C, the more kind of foundational brand colors. And for me, that's perfectly fine. This was never a rebrand, it's always been a creative refresh, right? So to me, the more important piece or pieces have been the early hero creative that Bo has created. Which, yes, he does use generative tools to create a lot of concepts, but him being an artist in his own right, he's actually doing a lot of the paint over work and carrying these styles to completion. And so it is a very interesting way to utilize these new tools to work. But I should stress, still a lot of human in the loop stuff. Quite frankly, I didn't really get a lot of help on the copywriting front. I figured it would be more helpful on that end. It can write a lot of stuff, but it struggles when you really force it to try to be concise, to try to create taglines and things of that nature. So I'm proud to say that all of those came out of the monkey brain here, which is good. which is definitely good. I think it was helpful on some of the information architecture stuff and in some of the suggestions that it made around just kind of tightening up the sites from a user experience perspective. And it is kind of mind blowing how you can have it, spit out HTML and you can check the site very quickly on your own, right? Even just in mockup form. So it has been fun to play with these new tools, but I should stress that it is still a lot of human in the loop work as well.
I mean, me and Nexus were just talking before the show, and it's a really interesting time to be in this space, in the technological space. But there's still, I mean, AI does some really good stuff. It can get you to a place where you couldn't have got to on your own. But then when
Mhm.
you add the manual elements in as well, you do start to get some really nice results. And I think this is what I'm finding is actually AI on its own kind of falls short ever so slightly in places, but it can get you it can get you to the prototyping stage, if you like, a lot quicker than what I
Mhm.
would have been able to do on my own. I mean, this week alone, I don't know if you guys in the audience have seen the BR mockups that I've been doing, but I've been using Figma, I've using a little bit of AI, and actually using the design tools as well. And it's been a great experience actually, and just um, that kind of back and forth with it. But yeah, no, it's great to hear actually, and it's quite an exciting time to actually do this refresh and try this out. What are your thoughts so far, Exodus?
Yeah, I love the color schemes. I think it looks really good, and I like that you've included those elements from DCR data, like the staking percentage, the percent mixed, and it all looks very clear. And I like how you've included that, Decred is the upgrade path from Bitcoin, which is something I personally always believe. So yeah, I like the direction of the sites, and yeah, there we go.
Just trying to
So
get in. I don't know
that's
if you can zoom in a bit
Yeah,
more,
this
Exodus.
is concept B, which is the, kind of lighter, more neutral background. Obviously, it's a very gray color palette. Exodus, I think you mentioned it has a halo vibe to it for sure. That is one of Bo's kind of favorite games of all time. And being a gaming creative director, by trade, I certainly see a lot of those elements. So I laughed when I heard that. Even that little triangle down, that's very Destiny. That's like almost a very Destiny UI element. Um, I'm less of a fan of this one because I just like leaning more. Yeah, this is certainly the one that I'm the fan of. I just think leaning into our existing brand, yeah, it pays dividends. It pays dividends here. It's certainly the safest of the three. Um, and really, when it comes down to it, I just kind of was, like I said earlier, this was a creative refresh. This was not a rebrand, right? So I personally don't feel the need to stretch too far from what we have. And the nice thing about this is you have the sky blue, Decred colors, contrasted with the green coming out of kind of the solar punk side of the creative direction elements. And so I just really like that composition balance, in this one. Um,
I know it was a bit controversial. I mean, obviously, this is the one that I'm leaning into at the minute, but I I actually quite like all the statues as well. You had a statue of like a figure sitting down, basically leaning
mhm.
into the self
yeah,
sovereignty, and I really liked that actually. Oh, yeah,
yeah.
Exis can
Where's
try and find it now, which would be great. If you guys in the audience haven't read through the post, it's on the Decred Matrix, and Aaron just kind of puts in some ideas about the way forward there, and this the whole I liked the idea of leaning into the sovereignty, and I've made a note about one of the things that you did say about trying to avoid the scammy words, if you like, what DAO
Yeah,
and governance,
yeah.
just to try and avoid associating us with a lot of the fake decentralized narratives that are around. And I like that actually. And the more I think about this sovereignty, the sovereignty is kind of what we're doing. And I made another note about you basically saying that the products that we're building are kind of the pillars of sovereignty, which yeah, I
Mhm.
quite like that. But this is a
Thank
lovely.
you.
I like this kind of robotic self-sovereign figure. I thought that was quite cool.
So you do like the robots. That's something Bo and I have gone back and forth on. I personally really like it. Obviously, I
I
was
mean,
leaning much heavier into the AI pieces in the beginning of my proposal. I've backed away from that in copy, but it's interesting, right? I told him to back down from it because I figured, this society would still be putting out monuments to humans, and not robots. But um, the pose and everything here I thought was great. And he has reinterpreted this in human form and some of the other hero creative assets that I think looks really nice. But to your point, um, yeah, leaning into sovereignty, engineered for sovereignty, I think really lines up perfectly with what Decred is, and what has been built. It stands alone as a chain in which the stakeholders are sovereign over the chain itself, over how it upgrades. And it sits nicely between kind of like the Bitcoin maxi, like fully ossified, don't really change. Any governance is purposely like anarchic, and is very chaotic. And I think they stand behind that idea without acknowledging that, like, a handful of people, between the largest miners and the mining pools kind of control that process, right? They don't like to talk about that. And then you have Ethereum, and Ethereum obviously is upgraded a shitload, continues to, has years and years and years of planned upgrades, has some form of like a social consensus and process by which an upgrade, goes through, but nothing that's on chain, right? They would claim a lot of the voting signals by validators as a part of that, like raising the gas limit and things of that nature. But again, there's nothing that's like codified. It has a process, And so once again, that's the cred. That has always been our, key feature. But you can't lead with governance. You can't lead with DAO. You just can't. There's too much decentralization theater in this space. And so those words have kind of been branded naughty words. And so anyway, when I landed on this one in particular, I thought, okay, I like this because all of our features really do act as pillars to sovereignty, the sovereignty of the stakeholders over the chain, right? The future we're kind of pitching here as the um, glorifying the sovereign individual, and a society built around everyone being self-sovereign. I don't think we've really ever seen a society like that in history, and so I just that fascinated me. Bo and I approached this, like I said at the beginning, from the perspective of like how we would do world building for a game, which my hope was that would lead to a unique kind of marketing approach, right? That hopefully helps differentiate us, right? We do not want to look like a Dino coin. We do not want to look like, God forbid, a vaporware project like Cardano or ICP or something, right? And so it's one of those things where I don't see anyone doing anything close to this in the space, and that makes us hopefully feel very novel and very unique.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was on a Twitter space with, what's it called, the crypto consortium or something like that this week,
Mhm.
and we got talking about the way that Decred does governance, and the way that Bitcoin is currently struggling to kind of filter, or not struggling, but they're trying to filter transactions, and one node is trying to push through certain improvements. And it's like it's a bit of a shock to most people that we've kind of given the stakeholder or the coin holder the ability to literally control all of those decisions. And one thing that we stepped upon is actual fact, a lot of these communities are using this kind of non-existent governance as a kind of mechanism to kind of have a heated debate and get people into
Mhm.
the space. So it was quite interesting. If you guys see that, it's over on the Dash channel on Twitter, but it was quite a good discussion. We had the eCash creator and who is also the Bitcoin Cash creator talking as well, and he's quite an interesting guy. So yeah, if you miss that and you want to hear about Decred's governance, that's the place to get it. But I'm loving the engineering for sovereignty. I think that's a great slogan. What are your thoughts on that, Exus, compared to the money evolved? And I know Aaron had a really nice point on this as well. But what are your thoughts about the upgraded slogan?
Yeah, I mean the concept of evolving money might be confusing to people. I thought it was okay, but I like this one, just as much, if not more, engineered for sovereignty, and then it says sound money that answers to its stakeholders, and you have stake bolded in bold there to kind of really drive home the point that this is a protocol for staking. Yeah, I think it's great. And like I said before, I don't know if you guys are going to keep this rediscover Decred because I feel like at this point a lot of people have not discovered Decred in the first place. So, you
That's
know,
fair. Yeah, that's
yeah,
fair. Part of me is like when I speak with people, most of my colleagues in the space will say, are Bitcoin or Ethereum maxis, right? And so the cred, if they've heard of it, it was a very long time ago.
yeah,
So I go back and forth on it. I kind of want to see, you need something right there to indicate that there's more below the fold on a landing page. So we've got to have some kind of a call to action right there. But um, yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. Like, do we have the notoriety that people should be rediscovering this? So we'll see. I mean,
yeah,
part of that was leaning on, you have a lot of people throughout the space. Years ago now who gave very positive shout outs to Decred, right? And so I tried to lean into that. I'll keep thinking on it though, for sure. We just
yeah.
need something that kind of indicates there's, um, more information below the fold. And then the desire here is to really kind of walk people through each of these features, once again, as a pillar to sovereignty. That's kind of the beautiful thing is once you lean into that, engineered for sovereignty, right? You lean into that idea. Uh, ev- every feature that's been built, for the most part, reinforces that in a way that I think is pretty easy to pitch. And then, like I said from the beginning, we're not leaning into the technical nature of these features per se. We're trying to lean into the outcomes that they produce. And
And
so,
do you have any plan? I know in your proposal you wanted to lean in a bit into the idea that AI agents could, Decred was a platform ready for something like AI agents. Is that going to be part of the sovereign coordination stack, or are you guys shying away from that, or what's kind of the deal with that?
for the most part, I've taken a step back from that, mostly for a couple of reasons. Like one, the community was a little cranky about that. Generally, I heard that feedback. I don't want to get into an argument with people who don't believe in the acceleration of artificial intelligence and its tools, right? And I also said many times that I think this is several years on the horizon, right? Before there are actually agents that can take on long time horizon projects without losing context, right? Without hallucinating. Like we're still a ways out from that. I don't believe that we're just going to plane out here. And so I kind of am looking a couple years in the future along that exponential curve. And I do still believe in the thesis that I put forward that the networks that are going to survive this foundational transformation of our society are going to be the networks that AI agents can plug into the easiest. And the same sovereignty, stakeholder sovereignty over the protocol that we've been talking about this entire time, Decred stands on its own there. I think it's really interesting when you start to go, hey, in a world in which we really do achieve AGI and you have these agents initially on the behalf of individual humans going out and doing things, like hell yeah, I would send my agent out to support the cred and write code for it and get paid for that work. And um, and again, you're going to see very subtle nods to AI throughout the creative. You are going to see some robot stuff inserted into this in a way that I think is going to be pretty cool. And then Exodus, as far as where I do plan to lean into it or not back away from it, is actually through the Bison Relay site. There's already been obviously some AI agent integration inside of Relay that I think is very interesting. And the light bulb moment for me is like Bison Relay is a pretty horrendous UI GUI experience. It just is. And maybe horrendous is mean. It should be more, let's just call it like very MVP, right? And so it's one of those things where if you're using command line though, right? And in particular, you get like Codex CLI or Claude Code to do it for you, you can very quickly set up an account. All the frustration that I had with the process, right, was completely abstracted when I had an agent do that work for me. Just like you were saying, Phoenix, on being able to create your own GUI. Anybody's going to be able to create whatever the hell they want very quickly here, right? They already kind of can, and like we're talking, that last mile requires a human to come in and do it, right? I believe very firmly that's not going to be the case for much longer. And then at that point, yeah, heck, if I really want to add a feature to it, I can. My agent can, right? And I can have a UI that I really like, right? I can obfuscate the kind of messy sign up process that we have right now, that somewhat is required for a tool that is like uncensorable communication tool, right? There's something very special to that. I know a lot of people in the community don't necessarily like Bison Relay, but if you're going to have sovereign money, you need an uncensorable way to communicate and coordinate with people who want to transfer that money, who want to buy things from you, who want to, right? I mean, it requires that. I think there's something very special about a protocol that leveraged its own Lightning network to create a communications tool, right? And so anyway, from the perspective of Bison Relay, I have a pretty cool idea we're going to put forward that leans very much into leveraging agentic tools to build kind of an ecosystem around Bison Relay in ways that I think is cool and lines up with the kind of CLI agentic coding tools that we're seeing right now and what you can do with those. So we'll see what the community thinks when I put that forward, but that's where I'm kind of choosing to really stand on that AI agent angle. You're not going to see a ton of it here in the main site. You'll see a little bit of it sprinkled into the new governance landing page, which will kind of better explain our governance process, why it's so special before it links out to Politeia, right? And things of that nature. But yeah, the reason to back down on it was a little bit of the pushback, not wanting to argue with a bunch of people who probably are not using these tools to the extent that I am and seeing how quickly they're progressing. I just don't want to get in that argument. And my thesis, regardless of what people think, I believe will come true. Part of what we're doing on the Codex front is constantly testing and evaluating open source LLM models to try to find the one that I think could be this ghost in the machine that we pitched. That is still very much our plan with respect to Decred. I plan to hand all of my stake to this thing and let it run with it, but I haven't found the LLM that I trust yet. And I don't know if I will this year. I don't know if I will next year, but I do believe that we'll get to the point that we can find one. And I just love the idea of embedding an agent into Decred, that it has actual stake, that has the ability to do whatever it wants, right? And again, you got to evaluate, you got to find the right one. But I believe that would be very special. I believe that would be a newsworthy kind of story, and post refresh, I think kind of would fit nicely with the direction that we're headed here. So that is still a part of the long-term plan. I did take a few steps back from leaning fully into the agentic coordination protocol messaging that some of the initial creative refresh docs had.
Yeah, just
So-
before the show, we were talking. Sorry, we've been using. I don't know if you've used Replit yet. You can just tell an AI agent to do things, and it's like, it's so clearly the future of work, and it would be great to tie something like that into Decred, especially if Decred has the tools to make that, possible. So yeah, but yeah, I agree with your take.
DAO and governance coordination with human beings, even if you just take the handful of ones that meet that criteria, that are not decentralization theater, right? Like Gitcoin on Ethereum for grants, they do run a process, right? Like it's, and it is on chain to a certain extent, stuff like that. That is slow because humans are in the loop. DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization. That's what it's always been. And the autonomous part doesn't really speak to human beings participating in that process, right? And so, if you could really have a bunch of agents coordinating on a protocol, I do think it would evolve quicker. I do think it would be more prepared to meet threats of quantum, the future threats that AI might bring to the space, right? I mean, you really can't expect some ossified protocol to be the one that wins. I've always had the thesis, despite being a Bitcoin dominant fund, I always have to say that to people so they don't think I'm crazy here, but I do think we'll look back as at Bitcoin as being the AOL of this space. Like poor Check maybe is like he'd be so upset to hear that, but I just don't believe that it will be the long-term winner. Now, I think Decred can suddenly, leapfrog, hundreds of other coins and Ethereum and Solana and get there? Not necessarily, but when you start to look around at like what would be a good insurance on Bitcoin, right? I'd pick Decred over Ethereum if I'm a Bitcoin maxi, right? So there's some really interesting pieces there, and I do think I'm mostly focused on getting the creative refresh done, but once complete, I like the idea of trying to put forward infographics and things that are in the new style and just continuing to churn out content that leans in a bit of that direction, starts to ask some of these tougher questions that I think the Bitcoin community can't really answer. And you're seeing this. I mean, Ethereum's leaning very heavily into this idea that AI agents are going to be running all over the chain, right? They have several new EIPs coming forward that are designed around agents at varying levels of kind of sovereignty around those agents. And so, yeah, I mean, the space is waking up to this. And I think it will be a good idea for us to align with it. Just going to start more on the subtle end than I'd originally planned.
So I've got about 100 questions and 100 thought process going through my head right now. But before I go into that, we've got about 88 people listening. If you've got questions, and I'm sure you have, because some of that stuff just blew my mind completely, and as I'll go through in a second, ask question in the comments. I've got the comments up, and we'll chuck them to Aron. Get involved. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. But the first one, and this is going back a little way now, is you said you got your AI agent, a Claude AI agent, to get you set up on command line BR. How did that go? How did that work?
Yeah, so I used Codex from OpenAI for this one, Codex CLI, and you can run that locally for anyone who thinks I maybe sprayed a private key out to to OpenAI servers. So anyway, you run it locally, and you're able to instruct it to do whatever the hell you might want, and of course it can go to the GitHub, read all of the documentation, read the code itself, right? Download all of it onto your local machine, and then go through the setup process. And I can tell you it's 100 times better than trying to go through the GUI setup process for Bison Relay. So just like that, I had the ability to like start communicating via command line, and that was awesome. And in a world where more and more people are starting to use this, if you go to like the Claude Code website, it's like a vibe now, right? They're like really leaning into this idea that you can just embed an agent into your command line and start talking to it and get things done. And I like leaning into that idea with Bison Relay, because again, the foundational primitive is there. You have this uncensorable, peer-to-peer communication tool, right? This very special. It's very cool. With agents on top of that, you can kind of build whatever the hell you want to see on top of that, right? And I find that to be, very fascinating. So yeah, I would encourage anyone who's struggled getting over the Bison Relay hump to work through CLI and have an agent do it for you, obviously locally on your machine, to be clear.
So another question. Oh, the mic's gone. Can you hear me, guys?
You're muted a bit or muffled.
Hello?
Yep, you're muted.
Hold on. 1, 2. 1, 2.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Sorry, guys. Software's playing up. I've got one of these blue microphones. I think the software's just giving me rubbish. Now, so oh my god, so many thought processes. But the first thing I wanted to say, if you were going through that process, and you're obviously a Decred holder, so it's not really a problem for you. But how could you get or would it be possible to get or how would you get your Decred onto Bison Relay using AI?
Well, that's a perfect time to bring up our new flow, right? Our new flow, as detailed in the information architecture Webflow PNG that we shared, is very focused around you click the Get Decred button, right, on any of these landing page designs. It immediately takes you to wallets. We've restructured that page to just better feature like the core wallets. And then do you want a hardware wallet? Do you want a third-party software wallet, right? So not forcing the kind of weird search that the current site has, or that kind of strange filtering via an icon and all that. Just making it brutally simple. You've clicked Get Decred, you have one more click to download a wallet. And then the third step in the onboarding flow is Alchemy Pay. Like, we're embedding that. It would be silly to not have that feature, because that is the quickest way to get Decred. If you don't want KYC, well, you better have a Binance or an MEXC, or a Huobi account, right? So it's like one of those things where, for me, the 1, 2, 3 is get the cred, get a wallet, buy it, right, and get it into a wallet. So going through that process, right, to get the cred, you would obviously need to be willing to do KYC, but that's what I would recommend for anyone who needs some to spin up a Bison relay.
So yeah, that was one of the points I was thinking about. Is if you could, and I know that this is ultimately the end goal for AI agents, is to have access to funds. So if they've got access to a wallet and you are connecting that straight into Bison Relay, I mean, that would just be
Yeah, and there's already like
mind-blowing.
Banker, BANRK, KRBANKR, I guess. Banker is already an agentic wallet that's on Ethereum, and so we're seeing it move in this direction already, right? Um, and it can only do pretty simple things right now, but yeah, from there, I mean, the sky's really the limit. I get most people are not going to want to trust these tools. I mean, my blog, I'm going through my own journey of trying to create or effectively fine tune an open source version of an LLM that I run locally, where obviously I'm the only one in charge of the weights. I'd never recommend that you use a closed source LLM for any of the stuff that we're talking about, just as a general disclaimer. Because a lot of the stuff we're talking about does involve, private keys, or at the very least, wallet password. And so, you want to be sure you're running things locally and it's not sharing any data, outwards. But when you take that forward, again, for everyone to be a sovereign individual in a world in which these AI tools continue to get better, is you need a very, very good open source LLM you're running at home, right? Because you really cannot trust the centralized ones. They're changing the weights every damn day, and particularly as I think about having young children, like, how am I going to restrict, or like, what am I going to do as a parent in this world? And trying to build a primer, if anyone's familiar with Neil Stephenson's Diamond Age book. It's a great book about kids growing up with AI. So anyone that's a parent or interested in that, I'd highly recommend that book. But yeah, trying to kind of create a at-home, in-house primer that I control. Because again, how do you get over the hump of trust in something? And when we're talking about money and trusting it with money, or trusting it with like extremely important decisions, like protocol level decisions, you obviously have to be certain there is alignment there. You have to be certain.
The problem is we know from bitter experience is that people will be trusting closed source AIs to do all this stuff. Which,
Convenience is a hell of a drug.
yeah, it really is. But we know this from the mobile age and all the rest of it. But it's interesting, like I say, to get, and my expectation is that open source or personally controlled AI will be a thing, and it'll be a lot more efficient. Maybe, I mean, probably about 10 years time. I think about it in similar constraints that the computer happened. First, it took a warehouse to run a few calculations, and then gradually got more efficient. And it just depends whether these centralizing factors actually get in the way of that, which I think, yeah,
I mean,
it's in their best interest too, really, but it's not
yes.
in our best interest.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, OpenAI's first or most recent open source release, right, that they had a smaller version of that that'll run on a smartphone. It's pretty slow. It's not as smart as the state of the art, certainly 5 Pro and stuff. But heck, it's certainly a lot better than Siri. Not that that's a very, high bar to clear. But yeah, I mean, like I've said many times, we're a long way off from, true AGI. I think we've long beaten narrow AGI. I think a lot of people that bitch about models today do not know how to prompt them well, or not prompting them kind of optimally, or giving them the right context. But um, yeah, I've always kind of been a futurist, and so it's a little easier, I think, for me to be somewhat optimistic that we're going to continue to see the progression, right? And if you believe in exponentials, it's like holy shit. And I think it's hard to see the pace of progress over the last 18 months and not think that we're early into like a step function moment, with respect to those. And so coming back to the creative refresh and everything, to me, it's always been about how do we position Decred, not just for like where the crypto market is today, right? We're trying to fight off vaporware and meme coins and all that kind of shit. It's like, how do we really position ourselves for what the next few years are going to look like against this backdrop of this radical societal transformation? And I guess the thing I do appreciate about the Decred community is a little bit of default skepticism around these things, and they should be, right? Again, the centralized versions of these things are going to be very powerful big brother tools too, right? So you will want something that is in your own control. And that's why, like, I loved the idea that Mateus, I guess, put forward around kind of anchoring different bits of data to Decred, kind of via like a L2 thing. And his idea of non-fungible data chains, that was the word, yeah, which I thought was great. And if you think about it, there's something very interesting about hashing like the weights to your model on chain in a way that can't get overwritten, right? Where even if I'm using one at home, how do I know that there wasn't some remote connect, right? Like, am I going to hand check and verify all the weights in all my models? And so when you get down to like, AI is this insane technology, but how do we trust it? I'm over here screaming like cryptographically. We've got these systems here that have been baking for years that are the only weapon I see against that, right? So I recognize that not everybody has that, view or wants to see that angle, but I do think it's a really powerful hook. I think it's a really powerful hook. People will continually ask, like, what's going to matter, as things continue to change. And part of this has been the creative engine, right, which we dropped out of the scope of work, which was part of our update this week. The number one reason to drop that is how much progress has happened in text to image LLMs since I put forward the proposal. It's madness. I mean, Nano Banana from Google is a true Photoshop killer. You can have it alter tiny ass little portions of an engine. If you took a screenshot of me right now, I'd remove my earbuds. You could not tell. I mean, it really is a Photoshop killer. It's incredible. And so we looked at that and just said it's a waste of treasury money for us to try to train one of these things when it'll be out of date. If it's not out of date the day we release it, right? Coupled with it's hard to prompt these things correctly to get the right output, right? And how do we police that? A shitty prompt is going to lead to a shitty output, even if we give tips and tricks around it. And so it just kind of felt like we're going to put forward this new creative direction, a bunch of body of work that, of course, will be open source, and anyone in the Decred community can take, and then go use your chosen tool, whether it's closed or open source. And I mean, it's funny when you think about LLMs being the new search engine, which I think is happening, right? I mean, most of the time, Gemini is responding to my Google searches when I still Google search, right? I do a lot of searching through OpenAI, use Perplexity. I have an open router harness that lets me like very quickly test a bunch of models. So as LLMs become kind of default search engines, like, it's very important that they're aware of what Decred is, right? So that's one point to make quickly is like the way we're going to do the website HTML and stuff is very designed for like some websites are like anti-AI crawling. I want the AIs all over Decred. I want every single AI in the world to know what the hell Decred is, right? And to know what its features are, why it is special, right? And the beauty of it is we can back it with data all the way down the stack. They can go to decreddata.org and they can see it, right? Like I've had the GPT agent feature go in and query the chain. I mean, it's insane what you can build now that they've given these AIs, VMs that they can run tools in. So I don't know exactly where I was going with that, other than to just kind of ramble around the idea that we're living through special times, and I'm excited the community's kind of pumped about this refresh because especially now, I think it can position us very well.
I think there's, I mean, yeah. Sorry, Exitus, go on.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned Mateus's work. Have you seen what Victor has done with the Schnorr signatures for he's working on his Pong game still, and it's nearing completion, and he actually went away from the Lightning Network to using Schnorr signatures so people can self-custody their funds when they go and place bets against each other. So I actually tested it with him the other day, and it worked very well. And it was just interesting because initially this was supposed to be like a part of Bison Relay. Now it's just its own standalone app, and it installs and launches like immediately, and you can bet against players. So that was a really interesting development, the use case of Schnorr signatures, and who knows, maybe I know he's building poker for it, and who knows, maybe that could become something major for Decred where we have this self-custody betting gaming system, and we can put in chess and all these other games and stuff, and hey, maybe set it up to like prediction markets or something crazy if it's possible.
For real, there's a lot of interesting things that can get built off that foundation. I have his article bookmarked, but I haven't gotten around to reading it. It's very cool.
Very difficult to read.
Signatures, I'm sure.
I recommend the Pong game.
I guess that's how he's kind of
fun.
doing multi-party computation on it. That's interesting. But no, that's cool. I've been anxious to play poker against some Decred OGs and see if I can't, stack a little Decred, right? I mean, talk about, ways to mine crypto, right? That's a good. I'm happy to hear that it's instant sign up and just spin up and start to play is pretty sweet.
Yeah, and my other question really quickly was obviously the Decred docs, you guys are redoing that, and that's really in many ways one of the most important developments here, as the current Decred docs is pretty outdated by like years. I was curious if you've made any progress on that front and kind of how that's going.
Very little so far. That's to me kind of at the end of the stack. I want to I've completed the first pass of the copywriting for all the sites. Now Bo is framing everything up. And I have another pass at that. And then I'll really take a look at the docs. The intention there is like, I'm not going to go in to Dave's point and rewrite technical docs. I'm going to correct things that are wrong. There are things that are just blatantly wrong that I will correct. The Constitution, I do want to update to remove the LLC thing. I know, as Dave argued, that it technically reads correctly, but I would argue very strongly that having any reference to a centralized entity in whatever form is the antithesis of what Decred stands for. So I will have a very short update to that, call it a red line. But yeah, the intent is more so like the documentation, reorg it underneath the ecosystem in a way that makes more sense, correct anything that is blatantly wrong. And then I'll likely have a set of notes that are just like, here's some outdated technical stuff. It's very unlikely that I will touch that. I don't want to have the back and forth between engineers on that kind of stuff. But huge opportunity to update the docs for sure.
Yeah, the public facing docs are definitely well needed an update. The dev docs, like you say, you're probably better off leaving them with the barge pole. But
For sure.
what I've found when I'm going through is actually a lot of the information that just general people need aren't actually in the docs, but you can find them in the dev docs. So it's a matter of kind of making sure all that's available in the actual docs. And as for the constitution, um, I think in the end you guys agreed, but the big caveat there was any update to the constitution obviously has to be done for a vote, doesn't it? So that'll be quite interesting to see happen as well. And I
Yeah.
generally I do agree, and I agree with Dave as well. But I generally agree that where possible, it looks better. It looks better not to have that, especially since the LLM, from my knowledge, doesn't exist anymore. So but yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And they, I forget even the jurisdiction they put it in, but it was, it was a horrific jurisdiction that would line us up. It just looks spammy. It's a silly thing to still have, and I think we should modify that. Now, I'll tell you, I'll update the proposal the second people complain about it, because I'm not going to die on that hill in the context of this enormous body of work that we're attempting to do. And so, quite frankly, maybe I'll submit here's the websites, all the code's live, here we go, right? And then follow on with a constitutional update. I just don't want to fuss with
I
any
think
mess on that
better
front,
way to-
any mess on that front. But I do strongly believe it should get updated along with a lot of the docs. So we'll
yeah.
see where we land there. Maybe I can get something that, and again, I don't want to pick on Dave. I hear what he is saying, and I do appreciate to a certain extent his very hyper fixation on language and wording, which is important in a constitution. So anyway, if we can come to something that everybody's like on board with, I think it would be good timing to get that done with this refresh. Because if you have people coming and looking in, I don't want them coming to a constitution that suddenly shows there's, an entity involved. That's just not what we're about. It's not what we've been for a long time.
Yeah, I think in terms of the constitution, I love the fact that we've got one, and I wouldn't die on that hill if I was you either. I think that is something that has to be addressed in a very specific way if you're going to go down that route. But I do agree that it would be nice not to have us associated with an LLM, especially if it's no longer in existence. But
LLC.
yeah,
too
yeah,
many
LLC, yeah. But no, I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about, but the one thing, and this is going back a little way now, the one thing I wanted to discuss was the 3-step onboarding process,
Mhm.
making sure that people have a really clear way of installing installing Decred, getting your first Decred. Can you just remind me, is the Alchemy Pay, is that the one that's inside of Cake Wallet?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, they were the
That
ones
is,
that effectively got that integration.
yes, that's
But
definitely
it
the
for us.
doesn't it doesn't work.
Oh, does it not?
The Cake Wallet, I don't know what's going on with it, but it just doesn't work. I've tested Alchemy Pay by going through their website, and I'm sure the best way to do it is to put their widget directly on the website, which is, I believe, what you were suggesting, and
Yep.
just have it so it's automatically populates DCR USD. You click buy, but it's never worked in Cake Wallet, and I'm not sure why. I'm not even sure if it works with Monero. It's just this weird
Mm.
thing, and the developers at Cake Wallet have not really looked into it, and it's something I've brought up with Joe, kind of like, hey, this feature has never worked, so I don't know, but
But you
Alchemy
got
Pay
it to work
works.
directly via the widget.
Yeah, from their website it works perfectly. It's very straightforward. You have to sign up with an email address, and there
Yep.
is a KYC process, but it's pretty much instantaneous. It's like it takes
Yeah.
a picture of you, and once you've done the KYC once, you're just good to go. It remembers. And when you do the KYC, it's not like you have to wait 3 days. It's literally like, okay, you did it, and you put
Mhm.
in your Google Pay, your debit card, and it sends the Decred to your wallet like within a minute. So yeah, it works really well. There is like a small fee, maybe 3% or so, but I would imagine for the average user, that's something they're willing to pay. And of course, we have alternatives like Bison Wallet or Binance or Mexi. And hey, hopefully Binance US merges with Binance International. There's some rumblings about that, and that would be a big win. But
For
yeah,
sure.
Alchemy Pay is severely underused by us. It's still currently not on the decred.org website for some reason, which is pretty frustrating. We also now have nonkyc.io, which we got listed on, so that works, pretty well. As usual, I wouldn't trust too much of your money on a website like that, but there's no KYC, and you can go and buy some Decred with USDT.
Yeah, the way we're structuring the process is very similar to like a gaming onboarding process, like how you would go from getting someone who has installed an app to move through the flow and ultimately get into your game and in free to play mobile make a purchase, right? And so, Get the cred will be featured on the landing page as we're showing here, right? That is the primary call to action. Clicking that takes you to the wallet site. Um, we're going to recommend the core software ones, right? Decrediton, Bison Wallet, and obviously the command line version of that, of Decrediton. And then from there, the hardware wallets, right? Because a lot of people are coming in with those, and then the third party software wallets will be at the bottom of the page. But there's like a little progress bar at the top, right? And so, it's kind of stepping you through that journey, right? And that journey ends with like staking it, to earn, right? If you really want to, right? But the first step is obviously wallet. The second step is purchase. Alchemy Pay is going to be featured very, very heavily into that flow. And then, yeah, once you've got your Decred, stake it and start to participate further, right? It's just kind of that is our funnel as I kind of see it. And um, I'm hoping that it helps. I think right now, the current site is that it's too many choices at any step. Like, what do I filter by? What do I do this? And you're going to see ours like really try to, feature things kind of in an order that's natural that should fit most people showing up, right? Um, and then kind of going from there. I really understand why the Decred Dex forces the kind of that Decred tip, right, to prevent spam and things like that. But that in and of itself represents a barrier, for somebody not having any Decred to come in and make a purchase via the Dex. So again, like we're not going to feature that, right? Because it's like, no, you need to either use Alchemy Pay, one of the centralized exchanges, right, to get some Decred before you can go further. So it's about really making sure that we're always featuring the choices that are the smoothest for people to onboard. So I think that's a really important thing that we're going to be applying.
Yeah, I think so. I think the fewer steps, the better, really. And I always, when I've looked at this problem in the past, I've done a couple of videos on it just to try and work out what the quickest way forward is. And obviously, for most people now, it'd be Cake Wallet. The big question mark probably is what is your starting point? So, is your starting point? Are you already somebody that holds USDC, or are you somebody that holds no coins? And I'm presuming that the alchemy is actually best for people that want to use their own fiat currency, buy it on there, and then put it onto their Cake Wallet. So in which case you have that two-step process, and you're basically initiated. If you're already a holder of Bitcoin, or if you're a holder of USDC, is it worth having that as an option? Maybe even a question: are you a no coin holder? Are you a coin holder? When they tick it, it then gives them that pathway. And it's something that I've thought about a couple of times, because people will have different starting points, and I guess they'll have different endpoints as well. And like you said, the progress bar um, doesn't finish until they're staking. But the problem with that is if they haven't got 250 coins, then that progress bar will never end. So it's almost worth saying, hey, um, your progress is finished. You're now self-sovereign over your funds. But would you like to take it a bit further? Something like that.
That's kind of the intent, right? And it's not like the progress bar has awareness of actions completed, So it's a very, I'm using that term somewhat loosely, but we do want to show people that there is a journey to go on, right? And that may, in fact, like to your point, like really, we want people to make their first purchase. That's what matters. And then it's about showing people beyond that, right? Um, so,
I think my only query there is being somebody that likes to finish things. that would really annoy me if I didn't have my 250 coins. I'm like, oh my god, I can't finish this progress. you
That
know,
would actually
whereas-
be a very, very mobile free to play thing because you'd have to buy a certain number to hit that threshold. So that would be
yeah, all of a
kind of a
sudden I'm
very
going
dirty
onto all
trick.
these going onto all these sites to
Exactly,
try and
exactly. I mean,
claim everything.
there's ways to contribute and earn Decred if you can't afford it, right? So, I mean, um, but no, I mean, that's a key thing. Like, the governance page, like right now, governance just kind of drops you on Poltea, and there's a kind of 2 paragraph explainer on the right. And then it's just like showing you proposals and stuff. And so we're going to have more of a landing page that speaks to what governance is for us, why it is very unique and very different, right? And then kind of call to actions around staking, which would take you to docs to a very specific, here's how we stake via the wallets that allow that. And then um, voting actually takes you to the Poltea site as it exists today. It'll get a very, very minor
As a
refresh.
secondary sort of thought there,
Mhm.
are you going to think about the voting.decred site as well? Because that's something that's kind of a bit hidden if you're not involved in the consensus process. Because obviously that's just for the consensus upgrades. And sometimes and as you go through it, obviously that's not on Politeia, but it'd be quite nice to kind of have a demo of the consensus upgrades that have happened and how the process works. Because there's still a lot of people that just do not understand the flow of that. And even me, when I'm explaining it, sometimes I think, oh God, how many? What's the interval for that, or whatever? So it might be quite nice to show them how consensus voting works as well. But yeah,
We are thinking about kind of an explainer there. Maybe it expands because it's quite a complicated process as it should be. But yeah, we are thinking about how to highlight that, and having a actual governance landing page gives us more space to do that, and then to bring people out to um, where they need to be to pursue their next step, right? Which you have to be a
Mm.
staker to vote in the first place. So why go look at, so it's things like that, just really trying to think through. I'm big on never giving people too many choices, right? And so you're going to see a lot of that. You may have to scroll, and then you'll get like, well, here's the centralized exchanges and choices, right? But you're never going to have like a singular view that's just like, here's some icons and like you can filter that way. And it's information overload. So you're going to see a lot of that reinforced in the designs as we get into more or as we share more of the sub pages and stuff like that. That I think will be um, very helpful. Keep it simple, stupid is something that, plays in my head a lot, right? And it's just like, never give people too many choices, like no analysis paralysis at any point in this journey. Keep it very, very simple. And I hope that gets reflected throughout because it's super, super important.
yeah, absolutely, sounds great. Guys, 142 people in the audience. If you have any questions, ask away. Um, I've not got too many more things to kind of comment on, but we'll hang out for a few more minutes. And if you guys have any comments, anything you want to ask Aaron while he's here, it would be great to get that so we can put that to the man and kind of get this moving forward. But so far, I've been really impressed with the direction you guys taken. I've taken a kind of a hands-off role. I'm really interested in hearing what the rest of the community has to say about this. But as far as I'm concerned, it's exactly as I would want it, and it's exactly kind of the messaging that I like. So yeah, but it'd be interesting to see what everyone else thinks about that. Exus, you got any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's great to see this coming together, and it feels like you guys are putting all of the pieces together and making sure the onboarding is smooth. And these are things I think we as a community have historically overlooked. And in Decred, there's always this huge emphasis on like the back end optimizations, and there's the front end stuff has been a little bit ignored. And so I'm really excited to see you guys take this on, and I'm thankful for you guys to take this on, because this is much more difficult than anyone can really realize. You can just look at it as being, oh, it's just a few websites, but getting the websites right is a big part of this. And making sure Decred stands out against the noise of all the meme coins and the Solana generated coins. It's really kind of gone off the rails in the cryptocurrency space. So hopefully we get something we're all proud of, and it helps, helps people rediscover Decred, and brings us into the forefront once again. And that's a tall order, but I really like what you guys are doing, and Yeah, it looks great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to, the next iteration of the docs and what you guys do with the decks and all that stuff. So yeah, thank you very much.
I'm really loving the rediscovered Decred, by the way. I think it's great. But you're absolutely,
It has a
you're
nice ring
absolutely.
to it. I mean, it definitely has a
I
nice
think,
ring to it. Um,
I,
no,
I think,
this has been a fun project. I mean, having been a Decred staker since 2018, this has been a long time coming for me, and so getting to kind of put forward a lot of thoughts that I've had, and then um, have them resonate with the community has been great. I'd ask that anyone listening that has not checked out the Decred Proposals channel in Matrix to go in there and check out the latest and greatest update. Give any feedback that you have. Right now, we're leaning towards this version, the version C, the blue version right there. And unless anyone really has strong feelings, I think that's the direction we're just gonna head towards. So check everything out. The feedback's been great. Big shout out to John Holtstock, who gave some really actionable feedback. And it was good to hear things like, I don't really like the sovereign coordination stack, because I've been like, yeah, that's a little extra in that whole sequence, right? I think Bitcoin as the start, credit as the bridge to true sovereignty. Is a great tagline. So let's lean into those things and kind of double down on what's working and go from there. So yeah, excited to deliver more in the coming weeks. Effectively, what everyone can expect is basically um, Figma files, probably, as well as PNGs for people that don't like to click on links. But the Figma files will let people like go through the website flows and see how things are kind of mapping together. Um, there'll be another kind of feedback pass around that, and then we're going to action the actual front end development work on that front. And then you actually have clickable sites that you can mess with. And at that point, we'd be looking to do the retroactive proposal for funding. I mean, at that point, we'd be complete. So it's been a little bit of a slow start to kind of get here, but there's a lot of work we haven't shared, and I would expect updates to be a lot more frequent.
yeah, I mean, it's an absolute mammoth task. And I think I was saying to a few people in other chats, a few years ago, I'd kind of thought about kind of taking on some of this work. And well, every time I looked at it, it just went, oh my God, there's just so much there. And I think I'm quite thankful for the AI age for that, to kind of speed up that process as well, because otherwise we are in this scenario where our documentation and our websites kind of all look a little bit patchy. And this whole flow of kind of getting everything into a hub, so that you don't have to go anywhere else. You can get all the information you need from decred.org. And it's not a case of, oh, where's that bit of information, or where's that, it's all there. And that's the way it should be. And having this opportunity to bring it all in, I think if it all works out, and touching wood that it will, and I think it will, it's going to be a great kind of um, reinitiation of the Decred project. I think get people involved and get people excited about it. I mean, in the past weeks, myself and X have been looking at other options as well for reinvigorating the community. One of which is looking at the liquidity aspect of Bison Wallet. So hopefully, when this goes live, we have liquidity on Bison Wallet as well, and we'll kind of start pushing all those things through, and obviously pushing forward on Bison Relay and getting storefronts going, just so people can come on and spend some money on some JPEGs. Everyone likes to spend money on JPEGs, but this is, if we can get the website launch, if we can get liquidity on Bison Wallet, and we can get more activity on Bison Relay, going forward into the next 2 or 3 years is exciting stuff, and then you can start to imagine all of these extra things that go on. And to Aaron's point earlier on, and I've just remembered this again, but Bison Relay is actually this untapped beast at the minute. And yes, it's a kind of a bit kind of, you look at the UI and you go, oh my God, but actual fact, the potential there is absolutely huge. So yeah, love it. Love the direction you guys are going, and love what's happening here. And that's pretty much all I have to say. No one's come through on the comments, unfortunately, so that's a shame. Decred community, you guys have got to get involved as well. There's plenty of you out there, 153 of you. So it'd be nice to get more people's voices on this and get you engaged more. If there's anything we can do there, obviously give us a shout. Aaron, always a pleasure. Exus, always a pleasure. Let's have Exus and Aaron sign out first. So Exus, you go first.
Yeah, just like I said before, it's really exciting the developments that are happening, and hopefully everything falls in place. We have a new onboarding system, new websites. Bison Relay gets a UI overhaul. The Bison Wallet gets a UI overhaul, and hopefully we're ready for the next bull run. So yeah, it's really exciting, and thanks everyone for watching.
Fantastic. And Aaron, last words go to you.
Great being here. Excited to share more with the community soon. And I'm always on deck for more feedback and anybody that wants to chat or has any ideas for us. Thanks a ton, guys. It's been fun hanging out.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Aaron. Thanks Exodus. We'll see you next month. But yeah, really looking forward to this stuff. Take care all.